Our objective is to put out a good product so that you can be proud, and we represent Des Moines, and we represent who you are as people and what Iowa is.
This is the Hometown Hoops Podcast with Drake Men's Basketball and your host, Michael Admire.
All right, this is the Hometown Hoops Podcast with Drake Men's Basketball. My name is Michael Admire. We stream these podcasts through the Drake Athletics Facebook and YouTube pages. You can also listen the traditional route. If video is not your thing or you're in the car, check out the free Varsity Network app from Learfield. You can also pull these up wherever you get your podcast. Coming up, we have a great episode today, wonderful episode, one of my favorites this season, and it's because ESPN's Fran Fraschilla stops by in person to have a conversation with us to talk a little Bulldog basketball. Fran is in town to be on the call for the Iowa State-Arizona game on Saturday, so flies into Des Moines, and on his way up to Ames, he pops by here because he's a basketball junkie, but then also, he's heard what's going on here at Drake University, what's happening with Ben McCollum and the Missouri Valley Conference champions. So he comes by practice, checks it out. We then spend about 25 minutes talking about what he saw at practice, a little bit of his background as a mid-major coach and how he's worked his way up. And for the last 22 years has been calling some of the biggest games in college basketball. And then, of course, we talk about Drake's NCAA at-large resume. He's got a really good insight into that. So we'll have that conversation coming up here in a little bit. But first, we're going to start right here. Drake University has been playing men's basketball for 119 years. And for just the third time in school history, the Bulldogs are outright Missouri Valley Conference champions. And to kind of set the stage for where we're going here, let's take you back to Ben McCollum's opening press conference and a quote that has always stood with me.
How we can hopefully leverage some of that momentum and get it to another level to where you're making NCAA tournaments consistently, which they have done, and winning NCAA tournament games, winning conference championships. But most importantly, while you're doing that, developing quality young men that go into the community and make a big difference in the community.
All right, so what we've learned is that Coach Mack is a man of his word. And what I love most about the totality of this Drake story is that Coach Mack did it his way. Here are 3 moves Mack made this offseason that led to this historic basketball year. First, Coach Mack took his time. It was mid-June before the Bulldogs completed their roster. It was August when the coaching staff was solidified. And it was, October before the schedule was complete. Coach Mack worked endless hours and then some to make moves and make decisions, the right decisions. Second, Coach Mack trusted his eyes and his relationships when recruiting. Bringing 4 Division II players is a fun storyline now, but you'll remember it was not an overly popular decision last May. One of those guys is about to be the player of the year in the Missouri Valley Conference, and all 4 have started every game that they could. Beyond that, he did his homework on every other player, sourcing high school coaching connections and character references. Finally, Coach Mack fielded a 12-player roster. There was room to sign more, but in this case, more doesn't always mean better. How would the team hold up through a long season, through the grind of the Missouri Valley? I asked those questions. They believed in August in these 12 dogs, and they've answered it loud and clear. It's a small circle that is close and connected. That's still worth something. And here, it's worth a 9th Missouri Valley Conference championship in program history. Still got a big one coming up Sunday at the Knapp Center, 2 p.m. It is senior day. There will also be a post-game championship celebration. So bring your friends. It's going to be a great day, and it is the final game of the regular season. So many people's last chance here in Des Moines to see this team and to see greatness, to see the best team in recent memory here at Drake. All right, so to kind of set the stage for this conversation with Fran Fraschilla, we got a request earlier this week that Fran wanted a pass for the game on Sunday. He's coming in with a mutual friend, Ray Cole, to watch the game against Missouri State at the Knapp Center. So when I heard that, I was like, I gotta shoot my shot. And so I reached out to our mutual friend, Ray Cole, to see, hey, would Fran want to come on our little podcast where we talk about Drake basketball? And all right, here's what happened. Fran was like, absolutely, let's do it. And let's do one better. And he wanted to come to practice and watch practice and then sit down in person and talk about it, not do it virtually. He wanted to come in here and sit down and have this conversation. So Fran comes over to practice, watches for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we sit down for about 25, 30 minutes to talk about Drake basketball. And when it comes to Fran, there's no one better in the game right now. It shows his personality, his genuineness. It shows in the broadcast, and it'll show right here in this podcast conversation. Fran is the real deal. All right, so let's jump into that conversation right now. All right, Fran Fraschilla, thank you so much for joining us here. Not only joining us on the Hometown Hoops podcast, but being here in our humble studios at Drake University.
Yep.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
I bet I surprise a lot of people when they see this, but not for people who know I'm a basketball junkie, which I am. And so on my way up to Ames and out of Ames on Sunday, when I get to see the team play, I said, you know what, I'll go watch the Bulldogs practice, and great to be on campus. I probably did one of the legendary games in Drake history, the win over Butler at Hinkle Fieldhouse, the bracket buster with Adam Emenecker. And so I got a little bit of a history with Drake, you know, and knew about Maury John and that great team, I think in 65, maybe.
It was 1969 was the Final Four team, but Maury was there in 65.
That's right. 69 played UCLA,
yep.
I think, right? With Alcindor.
Yep.
But anyway, great being here, and it's become a great basketball program again. And it's great to be with you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Also, a shout out to Ray Cole, a mutual friend of ours that helped set this up. I heard you were going to be in town this weekend, and so I had to shoot my shot.
Yeah.
And Ray reached out to you, and you're just one of the really nice guys of college basketball, and for you to stop by is incredible.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that 2008 game that you called?
Well, Butler had a pretty good coach back then by the name of Brad Stevens.
I heard of him.
Whatever happened to him, And I remember being excited about the game. I am a mid-major guy. Much of my early career as a young coach assistant was at Ohio University in the MAC. Then my first head coaching job was at Manhattan College in the other MAC in the East Coast. And so I loved the bracket buster. And what I remember distinctly was being in Hinkle Fieldhouse, which is historic. It's kind of like Allen Fieldhouse and some of the other great venues in college basketball. I knew they had a great team. I knew Drake had a historically good team for them with Adam and that group. Josh Young, who I've become good friends with, we still stay in touch. And so I remember the electricity in the place. And it was a game that I bet, again, I don't gamble on sports, but I'm sure Butler might have been favored by 5 or 6 or something like that, if I had to guess. And I believe you guys won on a buzzer beater or a last-second shot. And just a great basketball game. It really was. And it really put Drake on the map even more that year because we knew they were really good, much like this team. You guys proved it early in Charleston, and that game really set them up for the rest of the year because I believe that game was probably in late January is when we did Bracket Buster back then. So phenomenal game, and it's one I remember. It's one of the memories of 22 years at ESPN, how intense that game was.
When people talk about the 2008 season, there's a lot that goes into it, but that game specifically was so unique because of the bracket busters, like right in the middle of conference play. For those that don't know about it, right in the middle of conference play, you kind of pin two teams together, two mid-major teams together that might be able to crack in
That's
with
right.
an at-large bid. And, kind of where we're at right now, would have been nice to maybe have a late
Yeah.
January game against
Somebody really good.
somebody in the mid-major.
Yeah. Like, I'm just off the top
San
of my head,
Diego,
like
UC
East
San
Tennessee State or
Yeah,
somebody,
yeah.
somebody that is dominating their league, for example. And, Duke just played Illinois in a non-conference game at Madison Square Garden. But the idea of Bracket Buster was, to your point, was to expose some really good mid-major
Mhm.
teams. I had a team at Manhattan that got in as an at-large bid, which never happened in our league, but we were just so good and dominant throughout the regular season. We lost in a double overtime game to St. Peter's, a team that we beat easily twice in the regular season, but we got an at-large bid, and then everybody was going nuts. They didn't deserve to get in. Kind of similar to where Drake is now, although I believe Drake's an at-large team, regardless of what they do in the Missouri Valley tournament. You hear that, committee?
We've already clipped it. It's already posted.
Yeah, exactly. But and I absolutely believe that Drake will be in regardless. That's just my opinion. But that year we got in, and everybody for the next week, well, they don't deserve it. And then we knocked off Oklahoma and Kelvin Sampson, who's become a good friend. We were a 13 seed and beat them going away by 14 or 15. And then we should have beat Arizona State, except for a lousy call late in the game. But again, that's the typical story of a mid-major that's having great success over a season. But to your getting back to Bracket Buster, that highlighted some of the great mid-major teams when we did it at ESPN.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun, and I think it's something that I think fans have an interest in or a passion for that.
Yeah.
For that coming back.
It's a good change of pace.
Yeah,
when you're used to Illinois State and Evansville, that's all great.
Yeah.
These are good. UNI, like that game last weekend, but it was a good change of pace, and I do hope they bring it back. I think I think a lot of people liked it.
An appetite for it. That was the word I was searching for. Okay, so you've already given us a little bit of your background, but for folks that don't know your basketball background and the path to where you've come here today as a broadcaster, one of the top analysts for ESPN, how did you get into this crazy world?
Well, I grew up in New York City, and we call it the city game, right? And I grew up a Knicks fan, and I was a really good baseball player. I think I didn't realize this till my kids went on the internet, like when they were little, when internet first came out, and they get, Dad, you were all city baseball. I go, oh yeah, I think I was. But I really, as good as I was in baseball, I love basketball. And that was my first love. And I knew I wasn't going to be an NBA player. And I thought coaching would be great. And so from the time I was 14, I knew I wanted to be a college basketball coach. And I worked at a lot of basketball camps when I was in college. I volunteered my senior year in college to coach at a Division II school because the head coach was my friend. I got a full-time coaching job at URI right out of college at 22. I was really lucky. I was an assistant for a while, Ohio State. And then I went to Providence with Rick Barnes as an assistant. Then I became the head coach at Manhattan, St. John's. I was in witness protection out of New Mexico. My mom from Brooklyn said, do you need a passport? I go, no, Mom, it's New Mexico. It's New Mexico. Yeah. But I've been a junkie my whole life. Yeah. I've never had a job, Mike. I've never had a job, but basketball's been my life. When I left New Mexico in 2002, I did have some connections at ESPN, and I had done some broadcasting for them and helping out. When you coach in New York at Manhattan and St. John's, it's different than coaching at Drake or Bowling Green, because when you're good in New York, the world knows it. As good as Drake is, and we're giving them a lot of attention where we can, doing it in New York is really cool because you do have the national media spotlight on you. So I got used to the microphone, like this thing. And when I left New Mexico, I told my wife, I said, let's take a couple of years off from coaching. I'll try to do some broadcasting, and then I'll go back to coaching. I was young. I was 43. I had been to 8 pro seasons in 9 years. I needed a change. New Mexico job was very grueling because I had replaced a guy that later went to Baylor and they had some NCAA violations at New Mexico and then Baylor. So I inherited a very tough situation. We made it right. The team that I left behind went to the NCAA tournament. But I got to ESPN in 2002 or 3, and I said, I like this. And I get to watch my little boys grow up, and I'm only working 4 months of the year, actually working. I'm around basketball every day in one way, shape, or form, and I've been at ESPN 22 years. It's unbelievable. And I wouldn't change a thing. Bill Self, Tom Izzo, Tom Crean, Shaka Smart, all the Jay Wright, they're all very close friends of mine. They're all great coaches. I was on that path in some ways, but when I got to broadcasting and realized I could have a family life, that changed a lot for me. And I got to watch my boys grow up, and those two idiots are coaching now. I try to talk them out of it, but one's in the NBA and one's in college. So it's worked out great. It's been great for our family, for me to do what I do, because I got a lot of the year off.
And whenever the final buzzer sounds, you get to go back to your hotel or back home, and the stress leaves you.
I'm hoping that either Outback or is Outback open? Is Applebee's open? I mean, that's the main decision after a game is where we're going to go eat.
Gotta get your late night fix.
Well, and also like when just like a team, when you're with your, because you've been in this business. After the game, you want to be with your people, your production guys, and we'll, if we can. A lot of us have to travel early the next day, and leave town. But whenever you can, and you can enjoy like a great game or great broadcast, and you go out with your cohorts, it's always fun to rehash what you did well, the game, and so I'll be in Ames coming up here and watching the Cyclones play, which is why I'm in town originally. But I love that camaraderie. We're the same kind of team as the teams I coached.
I have a couple broadcasting questions for you coming up here because Drake is adding a sports
that's great
broadcasting.
I'll be back to help you.
Yeah, that's big time. I'm really excited about it. And we will definitely hold you to that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the basketball aspect. As you come into practice today at the Shivers practice facility, you walk in there, Coach Mack a little bit.
Yeah.
What are you looking for when you walk into the gym? What do you?
Well, I think just from our brief conversation earlier, I'm a basketball junkie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have been since I was 13. And I like to know, first of all, I love learning, and I still learn coaching. Like, I'm a broadcaster, but I still think of myself as a coach. So I'm always watching how people coach. I'm around the best coaches in the country. And on my way to Ames, realizing I had the time today to come over and watch practice, this was kind of a last second thing, as you know, and I'll be back on Sunday to watch the game. I love watching good coaches coach. And obviously I've been following Drake from afar. From a broadcasting perspective, what it does for me is it just adds to my institutional knowledge. If I'm doing a radio or a TV show during March Madness and Drake's 8 seed and playing, a 9 seed, let's say Mississippi State, and someone asks me about the game, I can say, when I watched Drake practice late in the year, I was really impressed, such and such. And you want to be, if you're going to be an expert at something, which I try to be, you want to add as much to your repertoire as possible. So when someone says he watched Drake practice in late season, how does this guy get around? And like they do that all the time with me. How'd you know that? Well, I've been a junkie my whole life. And plus, I want to see good coaches coach and good players play. And so being around a team, for a couple of days here is just great for me. And I learned a couple things. I learned a couple pick and roll opportunities today. I saw Coach Mack give away that I said, ooh, got to file that one away.
Yeah. So without giving too much away, what did you see when you walked into the gym and watched this Drake team play for the first time?
Well, I was telling you, like my first year as a head coach at Manhattan College, Canisius hired a guy who had been at the low major level, and his name was John Beeline. And John and I were first year head coaches in the MAC. He had a lot of head coaching experience. It was my first head coaching job. And we got to be friendly, and we got to really, really friendly competitors. For 4 years, we really did try to take each other's, rip each other's heart out, but in a great way. And Coach Mack reminds me of John Beeline. His offensive acumen is high level. Coach DeVries was similar in that he was in that top 10% of offensive minds, but in, as you know, a different way. More set plays, more scripted stuff to run for certain players. And while Drake still does that, they do it in a free-flowing form, different style, but both very effective. And they're both great at teaching what they know. And so that's what I saw. And I know from a distance, and then the little I've gotten to know Ben through the last couple of years and connections that we have, similar friendships, that he's really a very, very astute basketball mind.
There's no doubt about it. And he also has some really talented players to go along with it. I mean, I know you've gotten a chance to watch on TV watch the Charleston Classic and a couple games here and there.
K-State.
K-State game.
Watch the K-State game pretty much start to finish.
What do you think about that Bennett Sturts?
Man, wow. Like he's I want to say he looks like my paper boy, but nobody knows what a paper boy is anymore. Nobody delivers papers anymore like I used to. He's a guy at the Y. If you're picking sides and you need 10, he might not be taken in the first 5 or 6 picks, but he's a great player. Yeah. He really is. He's he's familiar with Kansas State, obviously, and I think he reminds me a little bit of this is an old school name who's now coaching at Baylor, but Steve Henson. Steve was a great athlete out of Kansas, was a decathlete, ended up going and playing for Lon Kruger at K-State. I know Bennett knows him because I know he loves the Wildcats, but Steve ended up playing in the NBA for quite a while, and he was just a like a nondescript, unassuming kid. And Bennett's very similar. He's really talented. He's one of the best guards in college basketball. There's no question. And but when I was watching practice today, I was like, man, I don't know if I would have taken him, if I would have picked him like first, second, or third on my pickup team until you watch him play.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You're around, all these great teams from the Big 12, so your eyes have adjusted to that style of play, and then you walk into this gym here today, and it doesn't look the same, but the results have kind of gotten to the same spot.
It happens a lot. It's not unusual, like Coach DeVries has similar teams. You watch teams throughout the season and you go, man, they don't look that athletic, or they don't look this, or they're not that big, but they just know how to play the game, and I love those kind of teams. And by the way, they're dotted all over March Madness. And those are the kind of teams that, oftentimes will do damage and make a deep run. So yeah, but I knew that coming in, because when they did what they did in Charleston and dispatching 3 really, high level teams, then they had something. And then to go through the Valley, which is a tough grind. We all know that, whether it's Drake or Northern Iowa, when they've been real good with Ben Jacobson, to go through a league is tough because everybody knows you. And to do what they've done so far and not slip up very often is just amazing. But again, they may not look like all Magic Johnson looking LeBron James guys, but they obviously are a really good team made up of some really good individual players.
You've already talked about the elephant in the room of the at-large bid that's looming. So I don't want to dive too much into it, but when we talk about the Valley and everything that goes into it, maybe not a ton of national respect for the Valley, but someone that is a basketball junkie,
I lived it. I lived it at Manhattan for a week when we weren't, because we finished early.
Yeah.
So we had to wait a week.
You had to wait the whole week.
And we were 25-4. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
We were 25-4, and we weren't sure we were getting in. And now, if Drake wins the tournament, awesome.
Yes.
If Drake doesn't win the tournament, and I believe the Valley tournament is early, right?
Yes, it's a week in between.
So it's going to be the worst week of his life.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's going to feel like they're in. He's going to have friends tell him he's in. He's going to have most of the media say that they deserve to go. But until you hear your name called on Sunday night, and I will tell you this, because I hope it doesn't work out this way, it's the most exhilarating feeling of my life when we got chosen at large at Manhattan, because we were so unsure that whole week. And it's different if you lose on Saturday and it's selection Sundays the next day. Yeah. But we lost on a Monday and had to wait 6 days. And it was brutal. But we got in, thanks to Bob Frederick, the former AD at Kansas, who chaired the committee and pushed for us. And then, as Kelvin Sampson, my good friend, knows, we whipped their butt. and people said, wow, they really are good. Now, I think Drake's got a little bit more national exposure than we did back then. But, it'll be a tough week. But listen, it all changes if they can win the tournament. And by the way, I mean it sincerely. I'm not just saying this. I absolutely believe they will be in the tournament regardless. I do. And, I know a little bit. I'm not an expert as far as how the committee thinks, but I do think they're going to be in.
Yeah. How much do you talk to Joe Lenardi, and how much do you do your own studying of bracketology and talk to ADs? Or
no, but I don't study the bracketology that much, but I will have people on a committee call me and say, hey, have you seen, like, they'll definitely call me about the Big 12. Yeah. And then they'll say, anybody else you think you've seen? And, hopefully I think they trust my knowledge and the fact that I do love the game and I do follow the game closely. if they call me, I'll be happy to say that. Drake deserves to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, it's a soft bubble this year because there's no Pac-12. So that's usually 4 to 6 bids that are going to go somewhere else. Now, they may go to 2 more SEC schools or another Big 12 school, but given this year, I honestly think that Drake, I think the resume's going to get hiccups, but I think the resume speaks for itself.
I love having that Fran Fraschilla stamp of approval. That makes me feel a little bit better going into next week.
I know, but I'm telling you, just win the Valley tournament. And
that's the plan.
Yes.
But at the same time, as you know, the Valley's
hard.
tough. Valley's
the other thing
3 games in 3 days.
It's the hard. It was going back to what we were talking about waiting a week, but the worst feeling in the world in coaching was mid-major head coach in or low major and having to win your championship week tournament because you work for months and months and then so it comes down to 3 days and you can have a bad day. You can have a bad shooting day or you go 12 for 24 from the foul line. It's just the law of averages. So that's the tough part for all mid-major conferences, especially teams that dominated.
Yeah, especially when you played well all year long, and then it comes down to just a few days in March.
I've lived it.
That's what makes it. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
All right, I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions for you here, just real quick. You are a champion of college basketball.
Yeah.
You really love this sport. I know there are some folks out there maybe disenfranchised with some of the transfer portal and the NIL and everything that goes into college basketball today. You got any words of wisdom as we move forward here that it's all going to be okay? Or are you freaking out too?
I freak out. I freak out because there's nobody in charge at the moment. No offense to the NCAA. I like the NCAA. But there's really nobody there's no central figure or group that can, they're trying to put their arms around everything, but I'm worried because I'm worried about March Madness. I'm worried about a couple of the power conferences in football dominating the landscape. Transfer portal's good, but it's not good when you can go to 4 schools in 4 years. If I yell at you, now you're going to call your mom and dad and tell them you're transferring. It's hard to coach kids and hold them accountable the way you could. Not that yelling and verbal abuse is good by no means, but when I watch Tom Izzo or Bill Self or Jay Wright coach, they still get on guys and hold them accountable. I'm sure Ben does that. The transfer portal, NIL, which is good in itself, it's way too transactional for me. That's not why most of us got into coaching. We didn't get into coaching to make a lot of money, although coaches make a lot of money now. But we got into coaching because we love basketball and we wanted to pass on what we knew and help other people, especially young players. And we can still do that. And I know they're doing it here at Drake, and I see it going on. Like they do it in a lot of places. But the transactional nature of our business, I said business is probably correct, of college athletics is just something that I still have trouble getting my arms around. And I don't know how it's going to change. I hope it does.
I mean, it is a little doomsday feeling at times, but I'm here every single day. I do feel like, you said transactional. I do feel like at times we can be transformational here on this campus at the mid-major level. It does feel a little bit different.
Transformational that's the magic word, where you can transform somebody's life because they've gone to school here at Drake for 4 years. Josh Young, Adam Emenecker, guys like that, and so many others, and just the regular students that come here, right? That's why we all coach, because I've had some amazing transformational relationships with players through the years. But I also have guys that if they weren't playing as freshmen, they would have said, I'm out. And sometimes you have to go through some adversity to get to where you want to go. And some of that adversity is realizing that you don't know it all. Now this coach is trying to teach you, and you're not listening. So you'll just pack up and go to the next place. That's the part that doesn't excite me.
You mentioned the students here on campus. Final thing for you. Yeah. You've been in this industry for 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. It is an ever-changing industry. For a freshman coming onto campus next year, getting into the sports broadcasting major, do you have like a bit of advice or something that you've seen that's helped you over the 20 years or even in the last 2 with it moving so quickly now.
No. We were talking. I've worked with some great play-by-play guys, some great production people. These are the young people that are going to be coming to school here, trying to get to those levels. Work at ESPN, Fox, places like that, networks. And I think, first of all, you have to have a joy and a passion for what you want to do. And if you're really connected to wanting to be in the broadcasting world, sports broadcasting or otherwise, you got to have a passion for it. You got to love it. Tom Izzo said this about a player: you either like it, love it, or live it. And it's okay to love it, because if you love it, you can still be successful. I live what I do. People go, how do you prepare? I go, well, I don't really prepare the day before the game. I prepare 365 days a year. If I see an article on Iowa State in July, I'm going to clip it out or print it out and put it in a folder. So I think, number one, you have to have a joy and a passion for what you want to do with your life. And let's say it's in the broadcasting realm. If you're in sports broadcasting and you're going to be try to be as good at everything as you can, know about baseball, football, basketball, soccer. The great Mike Tirico, I did the NBA draft with him one year, who is incredible. Like, you shook your head.
He's so good.
I remember doing the NBA draft one year, and we were the day before, and we were rehearsing, and out on his out at the panel, whatever they called it, stage. He had a book, and it had the U.S. Open. He had a 500-page binder of U.S. Open information. So he was doing the NBA draft, but the next week he was leaving for the U.S. Open. He knew every rule of every sport. So if a rule comes up, he knows it. I've been around some incredible professionals, and they're really good at like doing the little things over and over. I always say, don't get bored if you're getting better. And because it's really easy to get bored and get into a routine and then slip up on some things when you're doing what we're doing. And so I'd say joy, passion, knowledge, and then grit, because you may have to end up starting your career in Missoula, Montana, which is, by the way, a great town, a great college town, covering the Grizz. But, you might think you're going to New York or Chicago right away, or ESPN or Fox, and that's not how the world works.
I think it's perfect. Thank you very much for that. And just as a thank you for being on here, I mean, all of those things you just talked about, it transforms, it goes through the TV screen when you're on the broadcast.
Appreciate
and it. That's such a gift to everybody that tunes in and listens. So thank you very much.
I'm blessed, and I'm really lucky that I get to do what I love to do.
I can't wait to see how you squeeze Drake into the broadcast tomorrow night. All right, Fran, appreciate your time, man.
I can do it.